Hello again, everyone. So today we're going to continue talking about the Silk Roads, watching them expand, talk about some specific areas within the Silk Roads on this maritime trade. So the Islamic empires are going to have a huge influence on the trade, especially because they have a big trading tradition. I mean, it's almost spiritual. Remember, Muhammad was a trader, so trading is a big deal. And Arab land empires reach from the Mediterranean, actually, really almost to the Atlantic, all the way to India. Okay, these are some of your big ones: the Ottomans, the Safavids, and the Mughal empires by the 1500s, and they have some kind of rad names. They're the gunpowder empires, and I have an entire video on just them, so we'll get to that later. But the expansion of these empires, of course, have them controlling the trade in this zone. And trade was important for both the spread of Islam as well as the strength of the economy. Okay, so Arab traders are going to set up all across Asia because it's going to be vital for them. Um, so there's going to be some major changes that actually happen as a result of all of this. One, you're going to see a lot of environmental changes to grow specific crops, particularly two big crops that people will alter the land to grow will be sugar, which we'll talk about sugar a lot because it causes problems and in health today. So not too much sugar, but as well as dates. So you'll actually get people developing developing the land for that. You will also get migratory changes as well. Thousands of Africans are brought as slaves to work on sugar plantations and salt mines. As you can see, if you look at the black lines, they are the slave routes of particularly the Middle Ages, the time period that we're talking about. And so people would be removed from Western Africa and parts of Eastern Africa and moved out. And as you can see, all the way out to Arabia and Central Asia. At one point, there's a 15-year slave revolt that actually curtails the entire Muslim economy, but they're eventually able to put it down. But it's still nonetheless of extreme importance. And you see here Arab traders taking part in the slave trade. And that's going to be something that will also then morph into the Atlantic slave trade. And as we all well know, slavery is always, always bad. But this really pushes the spread of Islam. Okay, it's going to push into Southeast Asia, particularly in modern day Indonesia. Much conversion. Why? Well, one, there's prestige and power of the Islamic empires. Two, you would get tax breaks and it was just better for you. Three, sometimes in areas there could be persecution if you weren't Muslim. But four, many people like the idea and the structure of the religion. And it would take different forms in different areas, which I'll talk about in some of those different areas in different videos here. But as you can see there, if you look at the spread of Islam, the silk trades helps it just go. Okay, just like Buddhism on the land trade, Islam is really going to benefit from the sea trade. Then specifically in Southeast Asia, the fact of the matter is we've talked about a variety of different areas in Southeast Asia that empires are created as a direct result of the Silk Roads, of the development of trade and people realizing if we control these particular goods, and then that can give us more money and that can give us more military, and thus we can create an empire. And thus they do. If you look at the Southeastern trade routes, you see the choke points are very crucial, and if you can control those choke points, huge, particularly the Sumatra Strait, the Strait of Malacca as well. They're like Malacca's like the key one, but the Sunda Strait and going through Sumatra as well are going to be like really, really important. So the trade lanes are crucial. The Funan indeed would actually be one of the earlier empires that get created at this time. They set up in modern day Cambodia and Vietnam. There is a structure built by the Funan, as you can see there, Cambodian into modern day bottom of Thailand and part of Malaysia as well. Of course, we've talked about the Srivijaya as well. Indian culture is going to be a big deal here. Hinduism will spread all over the place. If you look on the right, that is basically a breakdown of a variety of different alphabet structures and glyphs that are all basically derived from Hindi. And so a lot of these areas didn't have written alphabets before, and then the Indians come over on the sea lanes and also through some land trade, but primarily through the sea lanes, and bring them language. And so if you looked at Malaysian writing and Indian writing, and it would look really, really similar to you. So things like Sanskrit and Pali are used to create written language for much of Southeast Asia. Also, you see lots of architectural and structural type of influence as well, which I'll show you some pictures of. And we've of course already discussed the spread of Buddhism, and when we know that's crucial too. Um, and probably the best example of the blending of all of these things is Borobudur. I showed you a picture of this before, but this is Borobudur, which was built by the Saladendrid Kingdom in Sumatra. And that is a close-up you see there of the Buddha. And you have these, of course, Indian stupas, but with the little cutouts that are definitely a Southeast Asian flair. So you see a nice combination of the two. There it is at sunset. Absolutely beautiful. It's a UN World Heritage Site, a place that I hope one day to maybe check out. Now, you do see some cultural differences in Southeast Asia, though. As exposure to all these trade, interesting enough, women are going to have a lot of rights. There's very few restrictions on women in Southeast Asia and the islands, mostly because they would get into trade. Okay, and there you see some woman traders. You got fruits and flowers and vegetables and stuff like that they're selling on their riverboats there. And because women got into trade early before men, because men were really more working like military angles and stuff like that, it was actually really confusing for European traders in particular when they first came over. They're used to dealing with men, and then all of a sudden they have to deal with women, and the women just crushed them because the men weren't ready. And one of the main reasons is the big thing in Southeast Asia, we see a lot of these cultures trace their descendants through matrilineal lines. Okay, they could own property, they could initiate divorce, and this was really, really important. Okay, and probably one of the highlights, the women in Angkor were actually known as gladiators. They served as warriors. They were members of the palace staff, and they could be poets, artists, and religious teachers. And so not all of the things that were coming from area, this patriarchy took place in Southeast Asia. So we have some interesting structures with Islam, the different trade. We see just the development of Southeast Asia as an area with kingdoms and stuff like that, which they really just had small states before. So again, you see the power of this trade and what it could do. All right, guys, that's a short one. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and I will see you soon.